Welcome to Future of Caregiving.
I believe my mom. I just can't tell you exactly where the pain is, but there's something there. Fast forward a couple days later, she had a hernia, needed surgery to repair said hernia, right? Did my PCP believe me? No.
Jessica Guthrie is an only child and the full-time caregiver of her mother, Constance Guthrie, who is living with Alzheimer's. Jessica started caring for her mother at 26 years old and has navigated the journey alone, all the while balancing the building of her career, caring for herself, and preserving her mother's dignity and legacy. Jessica created When Career and Caregiving Collide to openly share the realities of what it meant to be a young person starting in their career, all the while being thrust into the responsibility of caring for a parent and how to balance both. You can learn more about Jessica and her journey with her mother by following them on Instagram at Career Caregiving Collide. Hi, I'm your host, Leah Warnke, and this is Future of Caregiving, where we explore the rapidly evolving world of caregiving. From technological advancements to demographic shifts, we'll delve into the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for those who provide care and those who receive it. To start us off, could you just tell us a bit about yourself, about your career and your personal journey of becoming a caregiver?
Ooh, big questions. So who am I? I am Jessica Guthrie. I am an only child of my mom, Constance Guthrie, and I am her full-time caregiver as she is, let me put my phone on Do Not Disturb, as she is living with Alzheimer's disease, and I have been her caregiver for the last 9 years. Who am I, right? Like, I am a daughter. I am an advocate. I am an educator. I am someone who deeply cares about justice and equity, and ensuring that people get what they deserve in all aspects of our life. In terms of my career, for the last 13 years, I have been an educator, and I've worked for a large education nonprofit in many different roles, supporting teachers, training teachers, developing teacher leaders, and then leading pretty large teams in our nonprofit. And now, currently, I am figuring out what's next for me as I recently resigned from my role to spend more time with my mom and get proximate to her as she is in the final stage of Alzheimer's disease.
Well, thank you for sharing. It sounds like your professional experience is really interesting and is lending your skills to a variety of different roles. And the relationship you have with your mom, which we will get more into, is truly special. And it shows such a powerful bond. And I'm interested in learning a little bit more about your mom.
Mm-hmm. My mom's amazing, and obviously I'm biased because she's my mom, but I tell people all the time, I was her 39-year-old surprise. She thought she had the flu, but I was a 9-month flu, and the best thing that could ever happen to her. But my mom is someone that has always been creative, independent, fiercely loyal to people, would never take no for an answer. My mom owned her own salon for 17 years in Alexandria, Virginia, outside of DC, where she traveled the world, hair shows, conferences, and ran her own business with multiple people working for her. And then my mom, when I talk about being like someone who was so selfless, she gave her business up and sold her business to move to suburbia Virginia to raise me, to ensure that I had the best education and outcomes as possible. And so when I talk about my mom, she's someone who had great dreams, aspirations, and as I clean up the house, like, I'm seeing photos and news clippings and insights into who this woman was, and she was that for me growing up, and still is someone with a spunky personality. She says what she wants, operates how she wants to, even now in the current stage that we're in.
Yeah, your mom sounds like an incredible woman. And it's really interesting that she put a pause on her career to raise you, because that's also what you did, putting a pause on your career to take care of her when the roles were reversed.
Yes.
And just from your descriptions and from your social media presence, I feel like I have gleaned that your mom is a very strong and independent woman. And it took a minute for her to accept the idea of receiving help. Could you tell us a little bit about how you navigated that journey?
Yeah. And I would say it's not because she was never like not open to help, but I do think when it comes to a diagnosis like Alzheimer's disease, there's a lot that goes into that for someone um, in their just like their egos, right? Like oh, I'm fine. Nothing's wrong. I was just testing your memory, or like, I got it together, because I think that because we don't talk about it enough and like society doesn't really understand Alzheimer's disease, maybe there's a huge stigma with it. And I think my mom potentially was like, but I don't need you to help me. I can still do this on my own. And so I think she spent a long time potentially like trying to mask it or hide
Mhm.
the fact that things were changing, but didn't really know what was happening, right? And as her daughter and like protector, right? Like, you roll with the story too, right? Like, you want to protect her dignity and the story and the brand of your loved one, because you don't want people talking about you. You don't want people pitying you. You don't want people
Mhm.
thinking that you can't do something. And I think now that we're like 9 years in this journey, that's what my mom was doing, was trying to protect the image of Constance Guthrie, right?
Mhm.
Which is what led to potentially not wanting to accept the fact that this was a disease that she was now living with.
Yeah, it is certainly a hard thing to accept. And for years, there was kind of this singular narrative on what Alzheimer's looked like. And recently, voices like yours are amplifying the variety of experiences that exist and persist in society. But I can certainly understand the hesitation to accept or acknowledge a diagnosis like
Mhm.
Alzheimer's. So I understand that you are the founder of When Career and Caregiving Collide. Will you tell us a bit about this mission?
Yes. So I was 26 years old when I became my mother's caregiver. 26 years old, I was just really starting my career. I think I was like maybe 1.5, 2 years into working at Teach for America. And, you know, on the track to become executive. I had started my job and I was like, I want to be executive director ready within 2 years. Like, I was
Mhm.
starting to carve out what I wanted my career path to look like. And at 26, my peers were doing the same thing. They were traveling, they were living their lives. Yet I was then hit with what it like being a caregiver for my mom. And when career and caregiving collide truly represents for me like the collision that happened. Like, it felt like my world came crashing down. And in that I realized like, yeah, but like, you have to keep going. You have to figure out how to have both things, because you do not have the privilege of leaning on a partner, leaning on a family member or anyone else. Like, you've got to figure out how to balance both. And so I created, like, from a social media perspective, When Career and Caregiving Collide, to elevate my story of what it meant to be a young millennial Black woman early in my career, navigating this unknown world of Alzheimer's disease. And that people like me um, were caregivers, and we were
Mhm.
caregivers trying to figure out who we were professionally, and that we could have both, and what it might require for us to have both things. Because frankly, we don't have a choice. Like, we need both. So that's kind of where that came from, and my story, because at 26 years old, as a young Black girl living in Dallas, Texas at the time, I did not see other people like me sharing their story, amplifying the realities of this experience. And I wanted to create a space for people to feel seen, a space for people to understand, and a space to like uplift insights so that people weren't so ignorant to the realities of the things that I was experiencing and what I'm now learning so many people in my like age group were experiencing and are experiencing.
Yeah. Well, I certainly want to applaud you for sharing your experiences, because you are absolutely right that this is something that is not commonly discussed, even though it is commonly experienced, this intersection of employee having a working professional life and taking on the role of personal caregiver. We don't hear stories about people doing both, even though they definitely are. And that's for a variety of reasons, for fear of workplace retaliation or being passed over for a promotion, or just it's something that people are scared to speak about often. And so I'm really appreciative that there are voices like yours out there who are spreading awareness, who are advocating for changes that need to be made. And so you've brought up the unique experience of being a young Black woman in this position. And I know that on top of being a caregiver, you have also had to be an advocate for your mother's care, as implicit bias in the healthcare system can lead to misdiagnoses and inadequate treatment. So can you speak more to specific challenges that you've had to advocate for your mother in, and how has that impacted your ability to function as a caregiver?
You know, I think you grow up learning or believing like, oh yeah, doctors know everything. You trust your doctor, right? Like you trust the healthcare system, like anything related to medical professionals, they are there to look out for you. And I learned very quickly on this journey with my mom that that's not always the case. And what I mean by that is just like, I think I trusted medical professionals to know about Alzheimer's disease. I trusted medical professionals to be able to like, ask me the questions and, bring me in. And I quickly realized like, oh no, I, Jessica, need to be overly equipped with my data, my trends, my insights, so I can ask good questions and slow doctors down to get the information and insights that I needed. On top of the fact that I think, so there's that. There's just like the general preparation to navigate the medical system is a barrier in itself, because so many people don't have the time, don't have the energy, or even just the wherewithal to do so. And I think that was like barrier number one to navigate. I also think the fact that like I'm a young caregiver, and I am someone who is going to speak up for my mom and ask for what is needed, and that's not always received well, because it's perceived as not trusting, bucking the system, not all of that. But the reality is, like, if I don't speak up for my mom, who will? Right? If I don't tell you that my mom is in pain and that I'm concerned about something happening, she's not going to get the service that she needs. And that has happened to me time and time again over the last 9 years. I think, to name specific examples, like the positive side first. My mother's neurologist was amazing. And I think it's because when you're a neurologist, you see so many like just disorders impacting the brain that you've learned how to be empathetic and thoughtful to the realities of forms of dementia. And so my neurologist was excellent and has been excellent from the beginning. But I think every other medical professional has created barriers and roadblocks for me because they didn't believe me, or they didn't listen to the realities of our experiences. Things like, my mom having pain in her abdomen, and because she had Alzheimer's disease, people with Alzheimer's, they turn it on and off. And so maybe it's just gas, right? And you're like, no, but I believe my mom. I just can't tell you exactly where the pain is, but there's something there. Fast forward a couple days later, she had a hernia, needed surgery to repair said hernia, right? Did my PCP believe me? No, right? I think there's also the instance of going to the emergency room for pain in my mom's, what I thought was her knee, but the doctor didn't take the time to understand or listen to me and the realities of caring for someone with dementia, that he overlooked the fact that like her ankle was radiating and she actually had a blood clot in her leg. He sent us home with narcotics and said she'd be good potentially thinking about rehab. And so another example of not getting the benefit of the doubt or like a full workup or full understanding of what's happening. That could be race, that could be age, that could be Alzheimer's. It actually probably is a combination of all of that. But again, a barrier for me, because what did that mean? I had to go to the PCP, then imaging, and then 3 other stops before we got a real answer, right? That looks like doctors in the hospital not believing that my mother needs a certain medication and not prescribing it during a hospital stay. Saying things like, well, does it even work? Does that medication even work? Why does she need it? And giving me less than her dosage, right? And so those are 3 really specific examples. But when we talk about bias, when we talk about like barriers to families navigating to support and advocate for their loved ones, medical professionals should not be the people slowing down this process. When in fact, in each of those examples, I had 3 to 5 more steps to take to get my mom the treatment that she deserved because of either negligence, ignorance, or just like not listening to me during this journey. And that's unacceptable.
It's truly unacceptable that you have experienced this even once, let alone numerous times in every interaction with every healthcare professional. So there is absolutely work that needs to be done. And from your perspective, in your advocacy journey, what are your top priorities or goals in changing the future of caregiving, the future of family advocates in the healthcare space, in addressing implicit bias in medicine? What are these top priorities?
Ooh, so many big things you named to solve. Okay, yeah. But if I could boil them down, right, things that matter most based on my experience, I think one is, and in my mind, this seems simple. And I, of course, have never gone to medical school. I've just, am an outside person who's been navigating this as a family member. But I would love if we really overhauled the training and support that medical professionals received, rooted in like really strong cultural competence training that supports being able to communicate across lines of difference, across like age, race, and other like just cultural differences, because the greatest breakdown has come in like communication or lack thereof. And you're like, this seems simple to me, right? So there's that. I also think with that, like when I say cultural competence, it's also just like understanding the history of race in this country. And what does that mean for how people show up or don't show up in medical settings? And or what choices do you need to be making as a medical professional to ensure that you're giving equitable treatment to all the people that enter your office space, regardless of their background, right? For said doctor in the ER, my mom's leg was swollen. It was a little red. It does look different on her skin than it does on white skin, but did you take the time to examine and look? No. Right. So there's like things like that are rooted around what I'm calling just like my cultural competence bucket that I think starts in school, and it starts in just ongoing care and desire to want to challenge your own beliefs, experiences, ways in which you've been socialized to show up because you care about equitable outcomes for all people. So I think that's step 1, or maybe like 1. 2, I think the second priority is like, how do we really support family caregivers? And actually a lot goes untreated, unnoticed, because family caregivers just don't know. They don't know the questions to ask. They don't know like how to, be prepared when they enter a space. They don't know what they need to be holding on to. And it's just like, I need for folks to come in armored, right? Like you need your binder or your booklet. So like, I think we need to spend time making sure family caregivers with any diagnosis we don't just send them home with a pamphlet and say good luck. We actually say, okay, great, this is the diagnosis. Well, maybe not great, but this is the diagnosis, and like, here are the next steps you need to be taking so you're equipped to be an excellent advocate. And then finally, I think that we really have to spend time training the people caring for our loved ones, whether that is like in the medical setting, people coming into your home health, hospice, care agencies. I just think that like, people are always going to continue to age. People are going to continue needing care. And one of the things that actually hinders people's progress and are just like health outcomes is just like poor care. And I can honestly tell you, my mom is still living because of the intentional efforts I put into caring for her. And people shouldn't have to have another Jessica. People should have folks that they can rely on, they can trust to be here to offer support and respite and like effective care strategies, particularly when it comes to forms of dementia, because we are not included when it comes to caring for our aging population well enough. Those are my top three. There's plenty others, but those are my top three.
Those are some pretty good top three. Thanks so much for sharing your insight in that role. And I have several questions to ask based on that, but I'll start with, you brought up the emotionally and physically demanding nature of being a caregiver. So what are some ways that you have found to be helpful? You've mentioned respite care, you've mentioned leaning on additional support sources. What are ways that you found to be helpful to take care of yourself, resources that have been beneficial?
Yeah, so I'm an only child, and I am the only person in my family caring directly for my mom. And so everything that I do, I have to lean on someone being willing to volunteer their time and or pay someone. It's mostly I'm paying someone for the hour to be here. But what are things that I do for like to help get through this journey? I think, sure, there is the resources. I think leaning on your community resources. Every community is different, but like, we have the local area agency on aging that offers like volunteers that may or may not come to your home, and or like different programs. Like, I tried to get my mom in a senior day program to go away for a couple of hours and come back. She was denied, but that's a resource, right? Like, I think about like HFC that offers respite grants, aka someone comes in to your home while you get a few hours away. I also think about other nonprofits that offer literal like sums of money to help you escape. And so those are like the resources. But in terms of just like general strategies, the reality is, as a caregiver of someone living with Alzheimer's disease, getting away is difficult. And so I've had to learn, what are the things I can do at home within my schedule to create just calm and peace and care. That includes meditation, quiet time, either at the beginning or the end of the day. That includes resting when my mom is resting, aka like, if she's asleep, don't go do something, watch Netflix, right? Like, chill out. That includes a really strong just like workout and or physical wellness routine at the local YMCA. That includes being disciplined about my meal prep, because nutrition is one way in which you can take care of yourself that we don't always think about. So those are things that I lean on to get through this. Is it perfect? Is it consistent? I would say like 92% of the time.
Yeah, certainly. I'm sure it has been a learning effort through the years, and strategies change. I feel that more and more resources are coming about now. Are they always easily accessible for everyone? No, and that is something that needs to be improved. And of course, there is always room for innovation and new solutions in spaces like caregiving. Do you have any final thoughts for someone who is perhaps newly entering the caregiving space, or for someone who has been in this space for years and is reaching a point of exhaustion and needs a little bit of encouragement and motivation? What pieces of advice do you have for people in these positions?
Yeah, what I always tell people, whether you're new or still on this journey, is that you're truly doing the best you can. Right? Like, you only know what you know. And I think if you're making the commitment to show up and care for a loved one, whomever it might be, right? Like, you're making the commitment to show up and be the best you can be in this moment with the knowledge that you have. And so One is you're doing the best you can. And so that's one. And two, it's like you are where you're supposed to be right now. I think so often, especially even for me, right? Like I was resentful for a little bit. I was frustrated that this was like my life when I wanted to be, traveling and living my 20 some odd year old life. But I think I have now come to terms with and am like content with saying, no, I am where I'm supposed to be in this season. This is how I am growing and strengthening, who I will become. And that in itself is valuable. And the last piece I'll just share is like, it is okay to ask for help. People can't help you if they don't know what you need. And I think that's hard for folks who don't want to be a burden. But what you don't want to do is fast forward and be like, gosh, I wish I would have. Or hear people be like, if I had only known. And I think that you can ask for help in many ways, whether it's just you type up a list and send it out. You put it on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever your thing is, right? Like it could also mean, right, saying like, I don't know what I need right now, but I need my friends to show up for me. Or like, I need for you to call. And so whatever it might be, whether it's really big or small, do not hesitate to make the ask, because that is the only way you're going to make it through this journey. I'll stop at 3 things.
Again, 3 excellent points. Thank you so much for sharing. And you are doing incredible things. You are where you are supposed to be because you are making an impact in the lives of so many just by sharing your story, by working in an advocate and educating space. So thanks for taking the time to speak with us. And I just really appreciate you sharing.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Future of Caregiving, brought to you by Caregiver. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration into the world of caregiving and you learned something new and valuable. If you want to stay up to date on all things caregiving, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Tune in every week as we release new episodes featuring exciting guests and powerful stories.